So one of the things you can do is in your on-premises environment, so let's have on-prem over here. Let's just imagine that's your on-premises network. You've got, workstations and servers and all the bits of infrastructure that you would expect in an on-premises network, all connected to a network. And what you can do is you can create a virtual network device here, and that can be something like a F5 Juniper Cisco Networks VPN device, and there's a list of those which are supported. And you can also create in Azure, which is in the cloud. So let's draw the cloud over here. So this is the Azure cloud. You can create a network in here as well, and that will have your, let's just say, a web server and a couple of Active Directory domain controllers, for example. And what you can do is you can connect that through an interface to a network which joins these two things together. Now that bit of network there that joins those two things together, that can be either that can be a tunnel over the internet, or you can alternatively take out a private connection between those 2 points there. And there's a number of different ways to do this, but let's just let's call that express route. Well, let's not call it that. That's what it's actually called. So you've got two different ways of getting those connections together. Now, what this is effectively doing, let's have a green blob here. This is effectively taking your corporate network and it's extending it into Azure and including the servers and the resources that you have provisioned in Azure as being all part of your network there. So my phone just went off then. So all this stuff in the green shaded area is considered to be one network. And the best way to look at it is as if it's all one network, and this happens to be a router, and this thing here happens to be a router. It's all part of the network itself. That router there, this one that I'm pointing out now, we call that the gateway. And this one is just called a VPN device. That's just what it is. It's probably going to be a commercial product. You can actually use Server 2012 or Server 2012 R2 with RAS installed, routing and remote access services. And there's quite a few articles on the internet about how to do that. Now, here came the question. If you've got all of this set up and you've got this green network here, which is your corporate network, it may extend into the Azure data center, but you've got your green network there. How can you make resources that are in Azure available to customers? So let's draw that on the top of this. I think what I'll do is I'll just get rid of this diagram I've got here so far because it's quite big and quite sort of cumbersome. Cut. And let's just draw some new stuff in. So let's draw the on-premises network again. Here we go. Whoops. On-prem. There it is. And you've got your network there with a few different resources. Let's do that. You've got your device there, your VPN device. You've got your connection to the cloud. You've got the gateway over here, which is a function of the virtual network, and that's connected to an internal network called a virtual network. And on here you've got, let's imagine that you've got this is AD, this is a domain controller, this is IIS. Let's imagine that is a SQL database. Let's put a database on it. There we go, look. It's a SQL database, and this is also AD. So the sort of things that you could be doing here is you could be replicating data from your Active Directory into this domain controller, and because this IIS server is domain joined to the Active Directory, then it's got good local control over it. But one of the things you might want to do, and there's quite a few customers that go down this route, is you might want to keep your data in the on-premises network, but you might want to expose it using services that are put into Azure. So let's have the internet here somewhere. Let's draw the internet. Here's the internet. Look, that's the internet, and all your customers are here. So they've got workstations and there's users. got a user there, a workstation. So if they want to connect to your IIS server, there has to be a way for them to come from the internet into that box there. And there is. So let's draw the cloud boundary in again. Here's the boundary for the cloud for Azure. And what you can do with your IIS server, or indeed any server, is right at this entry point here, there is a load balancer, LB, and you can connect an endpoint up from your, in this case, an IIS server to the load balancer. That's called the internal endpoint. And you could say, for example, that's an internal endpoint, and it's on port 80. And then you can connect an external endpoint up to the internet, up to there. And you could put that on port 80. And what that's going to do is any HTTP request coming across port 80 is going to travel across here, it's going to hit this box here, it's going to be mapped onto port 80 on the internal part of the network and sent across there. So that's how you could get a web server, or any server, any service that you want to expose. You would just expose different ports to the internet and but link it in with an existing virtual network, an existing VPN, effectively. Now, the sort of thing that security people worry about is they say, you know, ooh, I don't like the look of this because this guy might be able to go in through this load balancer and maybe go through this router here and through this router here and take control of my Active Directory domain controller or take control of my SQL server. But the way that the load balancer is configured is that the only things that you can connect to through the load balancer are the things that you explicitly connect up. So in this case, we've explicitly made a connection between port 80 on this box, port 80 on the internal part of the firewall, and then we've explicitly made a connection between the port 80 on the load balancer and the internet itself. So the fact that you have that control and that configuration means that that's the only resources that anybody can get to are the ones that you expose, and you specifically expose them. So this is quite nice now, because what it means is that you can manage AD down here. You can just point yourself at that machine. You could add a user, for example. Sometime later, the Active Directory domain controller is going to replicate that user across to AD over here. They could be given permission, because this IIS box is joined into the network. They could be given permissions to do some particular action in there, and maybe this is a user on the internet who's going to use that AD account. They're going to come in here, they're going to hit the web server, and then there's going to be an authentication that takes place over here. The user may even be prompted for credentials, depending on how you've got all that set up. But it's a nice environment now. Now, let's imagine that the user does something which causes a SQL query to be executed. Then the web server is going to send the SQL query across the virtual network into the SQL server, and the result set, let's imagine that's a set of results there. Let's pick them up like this. And then the result set is going to go across the network into the web server, display some kind of web page or other, and the user's eventually going to be able to see what those results look like. Okay, I'm hoping that that's a good explanation for you all, and you can see how you can link both the virtual network. Remember the green bit I drew? This, oops, let me go there. This is still a virtual network joining all this stuff together. That's still a virtual network. Oh, whoops, and joins that as well. Right, hope that explains it, and I hope you understand it. If you've got any comments to make, just make them in the comment section down below. Alright, talk to you later, bye.